Good afternoon. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. I'm joined by Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins and our Deputy Director of Operations, Emily Saltzman, part of our executive team. We're here to give you an update on what's happening outside with Hurricane Isaias, which is approaching Westchester County. We're seeing the front end of that impact, but he has not yet arrived here in our backyard. The tropical storm is currently in northern Virginia at this hour, the 1 o'clock hour, and it's moving up the coast. It's tracking a little further west than was initially projected. So if you saw the projections a few days ago and they had a variable cone of direction, if it's tracking a little bit west, that will put it over the coast rather than out to sea. And so we would expect to see more impact from high winds than from rainfall. And usually the high winds are on the eastern or right side of the circular motion of a tropical storm. So the further west it goes, the more the eastern side of Westchester County would be affected. We think that'll mean the Sound Shore will be more affected by this. The height of the storm is between where we are now at 1 o'clock and 6 p.m. today, and we'll see impacts from now at some level until 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. overnight at some level of rain and wind. The storm will have sustained winds of 45 to 55 miles per hour with gusts up to 70 miles per hour. It is at a tropical storm level of designation. It is not reformed yet at the level of a hurricane. Higher winds are expected south of I-287 rather than north of I-287. So those of you that are south of 287 would expect to see a greater impact from the storm. There is an expected storm surge of 1 to 2 feet in coastal areas, and some flooding is likely in low-lying areas that are prone to flooding. Take note for those communities along the Sound Shore of Westchester County, from a little bit of Pelham, New Rochelle, Larchmont, Mamaroneck, Rye, Portchester, and then into Connecticut. That is the side where the hurricane will most likely create some surge, particularly as we approach high tide. With wind and heavy rains, we have to watch for trees falling, both as an impediment for those of us who are driving, and then as an impact on our electrical system, delivery system. And we would encourage everybody to drive defensively, because in the heart of the rain and the wind, a tree may fall down in proximity to where you're driving, and you need to be alert to what's happening around you so as to stay out of any difficulty. The county's Emergency Operations Center, located over in Hawthorne, will remain activated through the early morning hours on Wednesday, meaning overnight tonight. Right now, we're looking at 359 customer outages for Con Edison. They are primarily centered in the city of Rye and in the town of Mount Pleasant, although crews are available to reestablish power. The process of what happens, we've been through this every time we have a storm, but the electrical company, in this case Con Edison, or in the northern part of the county, NYSEG, has to cut the power off first. When the power is cut off, whatever the obstruction is on the road, whether it's a pole or a tree, the local DPW, sometimes it'll be the county DPW, will come in and dispose of the obstruction, cut it up into pieces, move it away, and then a separate crew comes from the utility company to restring the wires and reestablish the power. So it's a three-step process. Right now, while we're in the middle of the storm, we would not expect to go through the whole process right now. What we'll try to do certainly is cut the power off and try to get the obstruction out of the road. And then once the weather conditions calm down, the effort to reestablish power as much as possible is there. But at this moment in time, 359 customers. That number will vary during the course of the day depending on how many come back online and wherever else may be affected. There is a tornado watch in effect until 4 p.m. today in the lower Hudson Valley. So it includes Rockland, Dutchess, Orange, and Putnam counties, as well as Westchester. We have not cited any tornadoes at this point, but the conditions are ripe for a tornado sighting. So do be aware. If you do follow on any of the media outlets, electronic media outlets, or if you're following these things on your telephone, if a tornado touches down, you'll need to get safe coverage as fast as you can, generally in the basement or the lowest part of the building that you're in at that time. Our various portions of county government, the county's Department of Public Works and Transportation, all construction projects have been halted to prevent flying debris that would come from the winds. The crews are available to deal with any fallen trees in the areas that we have responsibility for. That would be the county parks, the Bronx River Parkway, and Playland Parkway. In fact, this morning we'd already had a tree down on Playland Parkway, which closed Playland Parkway between Midland Avenue and Milton Road in the 8 o'clock hour. The obstruction has subsequently been removed. The Bronx River Parkway is closed in two separate locations as we speak. It is closed southbound from Scarsdale Road in Yonkers. That's the general exit that's used to reach downtown Tuckahoe. And it's by the Asbury Church, but it is in Yonkers, but the road is Scarsdale Road. From that intersection south to the Desmond Avenue exit of the Bronx River Parkway, which reaches Bronxville and the Bronx River Road area of Yonkers, or to use it in other words, where the Sprain Parkway rejoins the Bronx River Parkway. So the Sprain Parkway is open, and where it merges with the Bronx River Parkway is open south through Yonkers, Mount Vernon, and into the Bronx. But it is closed from the point of that split in Bronxville up to the Scarsdale Road exit. Now, there's construction work that's been going on. If you're familiar with that part of the road, they've been milling down and opening up, and it is because of that construction work that makes it impossible for the road to drain as it normally would. So that area is closed. It is also closed in one of the most familiar areas for the closure of the Bronx River Parkway, between the county center in White Plains and the Main Street exit in White Plains. Just in that general area, there is a low area where water collects. It often floods, and at the current time, it is closed to traffic at that area. There are alternate routes around that. Central Park Avenue and a few other options exist. B-Line bus system and our county airport are operating normally at this time. Now, our county airport is running at a very low level of operations. There are no commercial flights flying in or out of the county airport right now, and that's due to the COVID-19 situation. The airlines have suspended for the month of August any commercial operations. So any of the operations at the airport are the general aviation private flights. In the last month, that was down about 50% from its normal capacity. So there's very little going on at the airport under normal circumstances, but it is operating and open normally at this time. The B-Line bus system is operating under normal circumstances at the moment. All of our beaches and pools are closed. We've secured the equipment at our various parks. Some trees inside parks came down overnight. They're being cleared by the parks crews, and the staff will stay overnight if necessary to make sure all of that's done. The COVID testing tents at the Glen Island site are closed. That also applies to the testing tents at the Westchester Medical Center. They are closed. So if you have an appointment this afternoon for COVID testing at either Glen Island or Westchester Medical Center, that is canceled. Consult your contact to find a rescheduling time. But as you might imagine, a canvas-type tenting is not viable during a heavy rain and windstorm, and so they are closed for today. The MTA is running on an hourly schedule. That is not the normal schedule for the MTA. It's an hourly schedule. The trains are running at a slower rate of speed. Their speed restrictions are in effect, and it is possible that service could be suspended if the winds get particularly heavy. We have no control over that as a county government, but we'll be monitoring it as well for those who are in the city and coming back home tonight. Con Edison and NYSEG both have staff in the field, and they're in place. Community liaisons are in place. Both Con Ed and NYSEG have staffed overnight in preparation for this. NYSEG serves about maybe round numbers 15 to 20% of the Westchester population in the northern tier of communities, and Con Edison provides electric service for the bulk of Westchester County. Since we said that the winds and the rains are going to be heavily focused south of I-287, we expect less problems in the NYSEG portion of Westchester County, and obviously we have more work to do in Con Edison, and that's reflected in the outages that we have at this point. Obviously, if you lose power, you call the utility companies directly. Con Edison power outage, and it also applies to gas services, 800-75-CON-ED, 800-75-CON-ED. Call them directly. NYSEG for electric power outage is 800-572-1131. NYSEG is 800-572-1131. And if you have a NYSEG gas power outage, one digit off, 800-572-1121. Anybody who's watching, you know what area of the county you live in, you know which utility company supplies your work. You can find this online as well if you have power in your mobile device, if not under normal circumstances. Common sense rules anytime we have these situations. There are very sensible things that we should do. Many times we don't do it, we don't anticipate it, but it bears repeating. You should secure any of your patio or terrace furniture, garbage cans, any outdoor items that could be blown around or, in theory, become airborne. If the winds get significantly high enough, they can be projectiles and they can cause damage to property and even to persons. So secure, take inside or tie down patio furniture, anything you have on a deck, anything you have on an apartment terrace. If you have an outdoor terrace, things you may have on the windowsill with the window open, all of those things could be affected. It's always wise to have a couple of days' worth of food, water, medicine, and critical supplies in your possession, flashlights, batteries, if you are stuck in home. We don't believe this hurricane is going to rise to the level of some of the other ones that we've suffered through, Tropical Storm Sandy, Hurricane Irene, and some others over the years. But it's always good advice to have some water on supply and some food as well in case you can't get out. Common sense reminder, if you're driving, particularly on some of our parkways, which are policed by the Westchester County Police, we do the enforcement out there, you should not drive as a motorist through standing water. You do not know how deep the water is. You might be on the Hutchinson River Parkway, Mamaroneck Avenue exit, you might be on the Bronx River Parkway, Sawmill River Parkway. They call these parkways with the name river in it for a reason. They're right next to rivers. And so when it overflows the Hutchinson River, it flows into the Hutchinson River Parkway and to the Sawmill River Parkway. I'm not trying to be facetious, but common sense says if you see significant standing water, you ought not to drive through it. You don't know how deep it is. You don't know if it'll rise up to a level that could compromise your ability to drive the car. The car might lose the ability to drive for one reason or the other and trap you there. And we don't want to have to send a bucket truck to get you. We want you to be safe and use common sense. If you don't have to travel, don't travel. If you're seeing this and you're comfortably in home and you have no reason to go out, don't come up with a reason to go out. Stay home, be safe. This system will work through its way here in Westchester County into the overnight hours. By tomorrow, it will be past us up through either upstate New York or New England, depending on its track, and we should bypass Hurricane Isaias successfully. Now, we name hurricanes by letters of the alphabet. So we're up to I, and it's August. So we know that the hurricane season will last through the months of August and September, and perhaps into October. This is the beginning of a process. So if you can, in fact, store up on some bottled water the next time you go out shopping when the weather is good, store up on some food products in case you need to, have batteries available for radios, for flashlights, all those common sense things all would apply. The county and the municipal governments are well aware of this. We're prepared on the Sound Shore in those municipalities for any expected flood surge. We will do what we can do, given the nature of the severity of it. And if it turns out to be very severe at a moment's notice, then of course we'll have people out there to deal with it once it subsides a little bit and try to rescue anybody who's in any sort of danger. But the hope is we'll all take common sense procedures. We'll get through this tropical storm and we'll await the next one. So with that, I'll stop, open up to any questions that you might have.
I don't really have any questions. It's just like, this year's been crazy, hasn't it? One thing
It has. We have humorously said we're waiting for the volcano to erupt and the plague of locusts to follow the week afterwards. But, as we've often said, and I'm not the only person that says this, we New Yorkers are very resilient people. And we go through a lot of difficulty and we bounce back. So yes, we've had years where we've had a tremendous amount of hurricane activity. This might be one of those years, given the early nature of this. And in the days of COVID, it makes it more problematic because we have to protect ourselves from the virus. But, we'll get through it. And again, common sense prevails. Almost everything my mother ever told me, she told me the right thing to do. If I don't do it, it's my own fault. And it reminds you that this is what we have to do now. Common sense will get us through this.
Actually, I do have one question. Is there
Yes.
any areas of concern? I mean, we have traditional areas of flood and Mamaroneck. What are the areas of concern this time out?
Well, I think, as we mentioned, roadways that could flood are a concern to us. We own, as a county government, the Bronx River Parkway, and we have responsibility because we own Playland Parkway. That's a relatively small 1-mile stretch of road. But the other parkways that are owned by the state in Westchester County, we're also concerned, and we do police those roads. So we have our patrol group under the direction of Commissioner Sheriff Tom Gleason and the chief that handles patrol, Chris Calabrese. They have their men and women out there to try to help motorists who might be stranded. That's probably our concern on the roadways as it stands now, particularly on the parkways. The interstate highways are built differently and they drain much more efficiently. We don't usually have a traditional area and backup. But in a driving rain, accidents can happen, and those accidents could, in theory, be worst-case scenario, multiple car things. So we worry about all of that stuff. That's an area of concern. And then, of course, I mentioned the coastal communities of the Sound Shore. The nature of this particular tropical storm and the track that it's taking could well affect those coastal communities. We know we have low-lying areas in each of those communities. The Orienton Shore Acres neighborhoods in Mamaroneck, the Larchmont Manor neighborhood in Larchmont, Premium Point, which is actually New Rochelle, Davenport Neck in New Rochelle. We have in Portchester, Grey Rock as an area that we would look at, the Milton Point and Greenhaven sections in Rice City. All of those areas border the Long Island Sound, and if there's a particularly high surge In many of those cases, there's a very short gap between the end of the land and how deep it is to the water. But in each of those cases, the local governments are on notice. We had a conference call this morning at 9:30 with our emergency operations team. Dennis DeBorgo led the conference call. It was followed up by an 11 o'clock call with Con Edison. And we've communicated with the municipal officials. The county is prepared to help where necessary. If, for example, we have a lot of trees down in a particular community and the DPW team of the particular community can't remove enough of the trees at the same time, the county will assist. There's also mutual aid between municipalities, and so we'll try to address it that way. But again, the severity of this storm, given the winds that will track with gusts up to 70, but not continuous winds up to 70, which would be close to hurricane status, would be the more concerning situation. I think right now we give you the update because we want you to know that the storm is of a certain level of importance. We should be alert to it, but it is not at the level at this point of the crisis that we've seen a couple of times in the last 10 years, and we're hopeful that we don't see storms like that this year. So, do we have any remote questions, Catherine? Well, thank you very much. We are not going to be doing any further updates unless situations warrant it, if they get serious. Ken Jenkins, as the Deputy County Executive, myself, Emily Saltzman, who is with us here as Deputy County Executive, Joan McDonald, our Director of Operations, Emily is Deputy Director. The four of us, as the senior managers of the county, are in constant contact with the Emergency Operations Center, and we're also in contact with the county police, public safety department, and the municipal governments. And if there's anything of major to report, we'll do that. Catherine Chaffee will communicate with you as well. And of course, there are other weather services out there that are giving you updates on the track of the storm. We just wanted to tie it into the Westchester percentage of it for 1 o'clock. So thank you all very much. Have a good day. Stay safe out there.